a lot of them think you go to college, that means you've made it, right? It's like, I made debt. That's what I did. I made it. I made debt. That's what made it looks like for a lot of us. I made debt. And then that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's also, again, understanding money. Like, debt is not a bad thing, right? But you have to understand it and learn how to navigate it. For many.
Hi, welcome to the Was College Worth It podcast. I'm your host Amir, a three-time college dropout turned graduate. On this podcast, I explore people's decision to go or not to go to college. I also explore the impact it's had on their lives and their careers. My number one goal here is to unpack their stories and their lessons learned to help you make an informed decision about your education and your career path. It's important to note that the opinions I express here are that of my own and only my own. They are not of the employer that I might have at the time that you're watching this recording. Please subscribe so I can maybe not say that one day. Mya, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate it. What are you doing today for work?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I currently am a senior solution engineer at Salesforce, supporting our retail and consumer goods teams.
Awesome. What did you get your degree in?
So my degree is in psychology. I have a bachelor's in psychology. I initially went in for a minor in marketing and decided I don't want to do that anymore. So I just have the standard bachelor's degree in psychology.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to note that down. How old were you when you went to college?
So when I started college, I was 19. I took a year off. I was one of those kids that was starting school early. So I graduated at 17, but then I went into the military. I took that time frame where I was in the military and I went through boot camp and all that. And then I came back and started college right after. I was basically stationed back in Florida.
Okay. Well, thank you for your service, first and foremost.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll dive into that a little more, but without thinking too deeply about it, on a scale of 1 to 10, and you can't pick 7, was college worth it for you?
How did you know I was going for the 7 if I was thinking to be nice? I think I would give it a 6, being nice. It had some value, but I would not say it was the ultimate anything.
Okay. What would have made it an 8 for you?
I think having more direction would have made it an 8. I started school not really knowing what I wanted to do. I was undecided when I first started, and there really aren't a lot of resources for people who go into college that are undecided to figure out what you actually want to do. So if I'd had more real world experience or just exposure to what happens post-education, as a first generation college student, I didn't really have a pipeline. I didn't really understand college. I knew it was a way for you to achieve something, but I had no idea how it worked. I had no idea how to maneuver it. I had no idea what to do after. So given all of those things, I found myself a lot of the time that I should have been or could have been, gaining the experiences that people have in college. I found myself trying to figure out college. I spent most of my college career trying to figure out college.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that with the first generation college. Just so I'm not making some, that means you were the first of the family to go to college?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I'm the same way as well. And I can relate. I had the same feeling. My parents knew like college is important. You should go. And,
right.
But you get there and everyone else seems to know that are from these like multi-generational families that have gone to college. They seem to know what the next steps are, but that makes me wonder, what do you think the colleges could have done more of to help support people that are like the first generation college students?
I think it would be really beneficial to have counselors that are well versed in that and that could maybe segment those students, right, and guide them a little bit better and give them a little bit of knowledge to fill that gap of not knowing what happens next, not knowing how to navigate college. I think, like I said, most of my time in college, I was spending trying to figure out how to make it through the machine and what I should be doing. And I had no idea, scholarships. I had no idea about internships. I had no idea how to make the most out of college. I really didn't. So if I'd had just a counselor, that really understood that, it would at least give me access to the menu, if you will. What are the things that I can do? How can I shape this experience? It would have been a lot more beneficial rather than me stumbling up on it and discovering things either when they were too late or sometimes even years afterwards. Like I found out years after I graduated that a 4.0 GPA means I could probably didn't have to pay for school. I had no idea.
Wow. I was just about to ask for an example. Like, what were some of those things? Are there any other things aside from the 4.0 GPA and not paying for school that you kind of look back on and you're like, I wish I knew that before I went to college?
Yes. Oh, yeah. So many things. Things like internships, being able to take part of them. I had even no idea how to apply for them. I didn't know where to find them. Didn't know how to apply for them. I didn't know how to pick a major. When you're like, if I don't have a clear track of where I want to end, how does one choose what you want to study, right? How do you append that as you move into and through your college experience? I didn't understand that. I didn't understand how to better utilize the extracurricular activities, the clubs. I'm someone who finds myself really enjoying deep thought and conversation. And it was after I, graduated from college, someone said, you really probably could have done really great in speech and debate. And I'm like, what is that? I had no idea. So just understanding how to make the best of the experience. There's so many things I uncovered, like I said, either too late or years after, that was like, man, I would think I would have really enjoyed that. And that really would have helped me in my career where I am now, that I had to kind of learn the hard way.
Interesting. So you gave the score a 6 out of 10. What would have made it a 4 or 3 out of 10? Would have made it less worth it?
I think if I hadn't met the people that I did, of the experience that I had, I met some great people in college, good friends, good teachers too. I had some great professors that really challenged me to, rather than go out, go in, and learn about myself. I learned about myself a lot in college. It was the first time I had to, in the real world, as an adult, figure something out without a template, without anything. So I'm really proud of the fact that I was able to do that, and the people that I met along the way, and the strategies that I came up for myself to figure out how to study, to figure out, how to learn, how to engage, how to be comfortable in a space that I was uncomfortable. I've never really had that to that extent before, with the weight of responsibility of this is supposed to amount to something. Plus, I had to pay for it too. So I think it was the first time I experienced being an adult and having all of these things at once. So I'm really proud of that. That's what made it not a 4. I learned a lot about myself by my great people.
Excellent. Got it. That's awesome. There's
and I
two
went to
things
school
that
in Miami, which is not terrible.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Actually, where did you get your degree?
Yeah, Florida International University in Miami, Florida. So, not bad. Not a bad place to go to college for sure.
Yeah, no.
A lot of fun.
A lot warmer than up north here in Canada, I'll say.
Certainly.
So, there's two things that you mentioned that I kind of want to dive into here was paying for college. So did you work while you were in college as well?
Full time, yeah, 100%.
And were you in school full time at the same time?
I was.
Holy crap. So I did that for 2 years, and I don't know. So I'm so glad I met someone else that has done it and that understands the pain. How did you manage your own schedule? Like, what got you through it?
It was madness. I mean, I say madness in hindsight, but at the time, it just was what it was.
Yeah.
So it's what I had, right? It was my reality, so that's what I did. And in Florida, in Miami, I'm not alone in being first generation. So it wasn't like I was the only person that I knew that worked. Um, I was the only person that knew that worked the type of job I did. I was managing people. So I was a
Yeah.
college student managing people with like managing budgets. I was in sales. I had to manage a budget, right, for my job. And like here I am going to class, and they're like, 2 + 2 is 4. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm in the real world every day. I'm coming here learning all of these empirical things. It was very hard for me to be like, I don't care about this.
Yeah.
But it was a good foundation nonetheless. But yeah, I was not the only one that I knew that worked. But yeah, a full-time job working as a sales manager and managing a budget. I lived on my own, and at one point in time, I actually had 2 jobs and still carried a full load at school. I also worked at the schools, at the university museum, on the weekends and on the evenings.
So you mentioned some good professors. What separated the good professors from the bad professors?
Mm. Uh, a lot. I would say, especially the first one that comes to mind, I really enjoyed, she gave very clear instructions.
Okay.
I figured out how to study and how to pass her class, so it made it an enjoyable class. It wasn't an easy class by any means. I'm speaking specifically of one of my psychology professors who I took like 3 classes with, but
Okay.
she was very measured in the way that she delivered the content and the way that she tested. There was no surprises. It wasn't a gotcha kind of course. It was an easy course. None of her classes were, but it was like, hey, I expect for you to do these 3 things. And if you do these 3 things, you're going to be successful. And I did those 3 things and I was successful. And I was like, great. So I felt like she was someone I can count on because I understood what she wanted from me. And I followed, and I sort of like let her guide me, and it was successful. It worked. Um, she also was very knowledgeable. She was also practicing at the time. I think there's a big difference. I would say from the professors that I had that were in their field currently versus the ones that were solely in academics, it was a big difference in the way the content was delivered. It was very practical. It was very, there wasn't a lot of nuance to it. It was just very strategic, very just straight to the point, and I really appreciated that. And very useful. You could action on the things that you were learning right away.
Okay, so that actually, it's a great launch off point because before the show started, you mentioned you wanted to talk about actual learnings versus the academic studying aspect of college. Sure. So it sounds like the professor that was actually practicing had more examples to bring to the table, not just like, here's point 1A, point 1B, point 1C, this will be on the exam, but here's a story of what I've experienced in a clinical setting. Was there anything else about that really helped?
I would say, yeah, it felt, if I can kind of in retrospect give it a phrase for it, it was a cheat code to understanding the true knowledge, right? So if I'm taking a class, I can think of specifically, I took a class on drug and alcohol abuse, right? The psychology of drug and alcohol abuse. And one could think that goes deep, right? That is something that is endless. It's still being studied today, right? And the approach that she took was that, hey, this is endless. This is still being studied today, but here's what we know. Right. And it cut out a lot of the empirical and went straight to, here's what we know. This is how we know it. This is how we're studying things moving forward. Here's what you can expect from what we know. Right. And also, here's what we don't know. Right. She was very good at pointing out the known knowns, the unknown unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. And it made it very easy to digest the information because I wasn't learning in what I felt like it was a bunch of empirical things that weren't in place anymore, or that really didn't have a tangent to what's happening today. So it's hard to action on it, right? It's hard to take that knowledge in and make sense of it. Like currently, I'm not a drug and alcohol counselor, never was, right? But I can still remember how the studies came to be. Who are we citing? How does this research happen? And where is this field moving? I can still remember that, even though that's not something I do at all, because the way that it was delivered just felt like when you're learning from an expert who's just going to boil it down, be like, this is the thing you need to know about this, versus let's go through this entire book regardless of whether or not we even use this anymore.
Exactly. And here's the knowns. And by the way, the knowns can change. There might be something that comes up down the line,
Absolutely.
right?
Hmm.
Do you think you were more attentive to the professor that was practicing currently purely because you were aware that she was practicing like currently, as opposed to just an academic professor?
Not at all, actually. I had no idea she was still practicing
Oh,
until like
okay.
my second class with her. She didn't, it wasn't something that she was forward about. Like she was just like, this is what it is. And again, it was just her approach was just very like, this is what it is. This is what we know, what we don't know. This is how it's applied. This is what I expect for you to know. And here's what I expect you to do with this, right? It's just also one of those professors that was like, hey, the knowledge is here for the taking. If you don't take it, that's on you. So there's also that accountability and personal responsibility that came into the class that resonated very well with me. She didn't treat us like children. There wasn't like, I'm going to take attendance, and if you're not here, you're going to fail. She's like, I'm not going to take attendance, and if you're not here, you better find a way to get this information. I'm going to give you the study guide. I'm going to tell you what you need to know. If you want to self-learn this, you're welcome to do it. So it also gave, as a working student, it gave me the freedom to say, I think I need to skip this class today because I'm exhausted, or I need something to do, and I never felt guilty for it.
Like that skill set that you develop through a course like that is so portable to the real workplace in terms of like it's on you
Yes,
and no one's going to really hold your hand. Well, some
it's on
places
you.
might, but in the industry that you and I are in, no. Here's the
Yeah.
information, figure it out. And, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And again, having started college after being in the military, that style really just made sense with me too, because that is how we learn. You know, no one is going to hold your hand through this. We're going to give you the information. It's up to you to take it, right? Ask the questions if you have them. Come to the office hours if you need to. So that sense of accountability I was very comfortable with it. So it made it very easy for me in a way it just was practical for me to go through her courses because I understood that I was responsible for the outcome no matter what.
you mentioned the military. How else did the military actually help prepare you for college?
Uh, I learned how to cram information very quickly, and learn things that are completely foreign to me very quickly. I think that it was a build up on. I feel like in elementary school, looking back, I feel like elementary school for me was a way for me to learn how to learn. And then middle school and high school, you're kind of building on the knowledge that you had in elementary school. When I got to the military, I once again had to learn new things, right? Unlike before where I was building on knowledge, this is brand new knowledge. So it kind of unearthed the how to learn again. And then it added the component of knowing and quickly actioning on what I've learned. Right? You learn it today, you action tomorrow. And that was new. So that was a kind of a new muscle I had to grow and quickly learning and then actioning. So when I got to college, I now had, I think, a very strong sense of how to learn, but also learn and action. So at college, action looks like writing your papers, taking your exams, right, and your thesis if you're in that realm. So it was very easy for me to figure that out. What do I need to learn to be able to deliver back what I need to deliver back?
Absolutely. It's just in time information that you're applying. It's not
Yes.
all this like theoretical, what could happen if, what happens, like rubber needs to meet the road now. Let's get some traction here
Yes.
and hit it.
Yep.
What made you actually want to join the military out of high school?
A number of different things. I was in ROTC in high school, so it felt like a natural fit on one end,
ROTC?
right? Just kind of, yeah, yeah, the junior reserve officer training course. So
Okay.
in college it's ROTC, in high school it's JROTC. So it's led by retired military veterans. What it does is it gives you, it's not military training per se, but it does give you a lot of it. Like you learn the rank structure, you do drills, there's different teams, you wear uniforms. So it does give you a sense of what being in the military is like while you're in school. Um, it's not designed as a pipeline to the military by any means. But if that's the way you want to go, it does give you a heads up, right? Because now you already understand a lot of how the military works. Use the same terminology, a lot of things are very much the same. So you kind of get a little bit of a leg up if you choose to do that.
It felt like a natural fit. Okay. What was your role in the military again?
I was a power equipment and generator mechanic. So I fixed electrical components in vehicles out of defiance.
Out of defiance?
Yes. So I actually originally wanted to go in for military intelligence. I love the brain. And so my original plan for myself was I'm going to go into military intelligence. My ASVAB scores were in line with it, but I wasn't old enough because I was only 17 when I went to the military. So they wanted for you to be like 21 and over to go into intelligence. So I said, fine, let's swing the pendulum in the other direction. What are the jobs that people like me don't get? Because I knew I didn't want to be like an administrator or anything to do with like paperwork. Solely for the reason this felt extreme to me, right? Joining the military is a bit extreme. It's something kind of out there. No one in my immediate family had ever done it, especially not in the United States. So I wanted a job that kind of complemented that to an extent. I was like, I could be a secretary now, right? Like I can do admin work now, and we need those people. And I'm glad for those, military professionals that work in those fields. I wanted something different. So, because I couldn't go into intelligence, I was like, fine, give me the job that people like me don't get. Swing the pendulum on the other side. I want a job that I can't easily walk into as a civilian. And women being mechanics is still something that is not easy to walk into.
No, I don't imagine so. And I wonder how, like, to drop more broadly, I think where it helped with the junior program in high school is just learning like the terminology and everything like that. So like when you
Certainly.
do go into these things, this happens in our industry at Salesforce if people have never experienced it. You just hear all these new terms and you feel kind of outcasted by it. You're like, what are these people talking about? But once you catch on to the lingo, you kind of feel like more part of the group and you're on the in.
Yeah.
So I imagine that's a challenge, and especially and
then it's up to you how you use those terms.
Yeah, and and it's a friendly reminder to not assume everyone knows what we're talking about, especially when they're not in the Salesforce realm of things.
I actually recently had someone ask me, "Do you remember the time when you woke up and these acronyms made sense?" I was like, I don't remember a time when I woke up and the acronyms make sense, but you're right. There was a day at some point in time that I woke up and these acronyms made sense.
Yeah, it takes a while. I remember my first Salesforce meeting, like getting a job in Salesforce and going to meetings, and that whole week I was like, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. Like, what's going on?
It's very alienating.
Yeah,
it can be very alienating. For me, I felt like it wasn't incredibly alienating because I already experienced it, right? Yeah. I already knew what it was like to be alienated by acronyms. So I already had a methodology for figuring out acronyms. So a lot of times I could just figure them out. And I already had a way for kind of making myself comfortable in that space. But I'm very cognizant of that for other people. So whenever I encounter someone that's new, I'm like, hey, use me as your glossary, use me as your thesaurus. I'm your girl. Yeah. I'm very mindful of not using acronyms when I'm speaking to people whenever possible, unless I know the person that I'm speaking with already knows them. I tend to mirror people. If you use them, I use them. If you don't, then I don't.
So what's your system for like actually figuring them out?
I use the context clues around them. So the way that you use them, the words around the acronym kind of give me an idea of what we're pointing towards, right? And I try to break it down in my head. Like, what could this be, right? Given the words that I have, what could this actually be? And then of course there's Google, right? My friend Google, and I would look through a number of different definitions for acronyms and go, that sounds about right. Yeah. And then I usually will confer back, like, did you mean this? Like, oh yeah, okay, cool. But yeah, I try to figure it out. I find it kind of fun.
Yeah, it is fun, but it also highlights the how distracting it is when you're trying to communicate something and you use an acronym to someone who doesn't know, well, now they're not even focused on what you're actually trying to communicate. They're focused on the acronym that they have no idea what the hell it means.
Stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually want to go back to the pay aspect and how you decided to work through school. Were you considering taking out loans to kind of cover that financial portion of college and or the part that you actually worked to earn? And so you took on the loans and worked as well. And was that just, okay. So was there a part of you that was considering maybe I'll just do this all on loans?
Yeah, I mean, I really wasn't given a choice. Again, I didn't understand how to navigate school. So when you're registering and they're like, hey, your bill is this much money. And I'm like, I don't have that much money. I'm like, take out a loan. It was just natural. Like no one ever even talked me through what I was actually doing when I was taking out these loans. I just knew the only thing that I knew when I was taking out loans is that I 100% did not want my parents involved. I know they would. My parents would give up their house if they had to, right? Like I knew they would, but I did not want that. I wanted it to be mine, right? Because like if I'm going down with this thing, I'm going down with this thing. I don't want to drag anybody else down with me. And the way that it was presented to me, it feels so predatory to think about that right now, because it really was just that, hey, you owe this much money. You don't have this much money to pay right now. They never talked to me about financing options. They never talked to me about how I could break down scholarships. They never talked to me about grants, anything. It was like, your financial aid says this, your balance is that. If you don't have the check to pay right now, just get a loan. When you graduate, you'll make more money than this anyway. You'll be able to pay it back easily. It's what I was told. Right. And I believed it. So I was like, well, I mean, I don't know how else I'm going to pay for this. I don't want my parents to have to take out money from their home or have to, squeeze any more than they already have to help me pay for this. So what other option do I have? So that's what I did. I took out loans.
Awesome. And
to
then
bridge those gaps, that I financially didn't cover.
Yeah. And then you worked full time to just kind of cover whatever you could at the time. Yeah. That's
take care of myself and buy the books. Oh my gosh, they were so expensive. Right? Because there's also that part. You also have books to buy. And they were not cheap books. So I also needed money for that. So that's what worked.
Like I feel like you're like the dream daughter that people want. Like and like you said, they would have paid for it. I think a lot of families would as well, especially like if you're the first person like in the family or the first generation to actually start going to college. They're just like, oh, this is the big milestone to get is getting you to college. Let's just funnel all of our money. Let's refinance our house. So going into the first generation college experience, how was college talked about in your household? Do you remember like the first time you remember having a conversation with a family about it?
No, actually, I don't think it was talked about explicitly much at all, other than like it was the thing that happens next, I guess. My parents' education was outside of the U.S. in the Dominican Republic, and both of them got, I believe, to like junior high school level by American comparison. So beyond that, it was a no, right? It was really what happens. They're looking at me like, what happens next? And I'm like, I don't know. Everybody around here says you have to go to college. So I guess that's what I have to do next. An entire thing was something for me to figure out on my own. I had my parents' support 100%, but I also grew up in a household where you do the work, we have your back was sort of how we did things. So you go figure it out, we have your back, right? If I can help you do something, I'm going to help you do it, but you have to figure out what that something is. I can even think back to even getting my first car. My dad was like, sure, go find it. I had to go figure out how to buy a car. At like 16, I had to figure out how you find a car, how you buy it, what you do with it. And then he came in and said, okay, this sounds good. Yep. Well, I'm willing to pay that much money and sign for it. That's how I got my first car. So that's how it was for college too. I didn't know anything. So it wasn't something we spoke about very often.
I love that parenting approach.
I do too, actually.
It really builds resiliency and clearly it's gotten you to where you are today, in that like I'm just gonna throw myself in, figure it out. Like I'm comfortable with being uncomfortable. So
Yeah, I am too. Yeah, and I don't know that it was my parents' strategy to do that, but I'm very grateful that that is how they chose to parent.
absolutely. So it doesn't sound like did they try to steer you in any direction, or was it just like pick anything you want in college? We trust that you're going to pick the right thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I feel like I got more pressure from like my family outside of my immediate household, my family back home. You know, the traditional, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And I'm like, I don't want to do either of those things. Like, I knew that. I knew I didn't want to do those things. But I know that that is, you know, for a lot of immigrant families and families abroad, like that is success. That's what success looks like. And I always knew that I was a little off center in that regard. And I had no desire to do, you know, medicine or law. And it scared me to because I didn't even know how you approach either. Like I was like, you have to be like a super smart person to do both of those things. I didn't consider myself to be super smart. I was just okay. Because again, I didn't even understand that a 4.0 GPA was great. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was like, this is just my grades. I don't know. So in that I don't know phase, that's why I went to school. And when I started college, I knew that it was something to do. That's part of why I went into the military before I started college, because I knew that I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I didn't want to waste that first year trying to figure that out. Like I was like, I could do something in the meantime that is going to be beneficial to me. It's going to give me something that's going to be a tangible skill that I can use right away. So I'm going to do this instead while I figure everything else out. Because I did see people going to school and, you know, they would graduate and then they would kind of fumble around, couldn't really find work. They really have direction. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that. Like this thing isn't cheap and I don't want to spend the time doing that to then figure out what I want to do with myself. I at least want to have some semblance of what I want to do or something, or at least something useful, right, in the meantime. So that's what the military felt like to me. It was something useful, something I already kind of understood a little bit. So it gave me lower barrier to entry to figure out while I figured out what does life look like after this, right? Sort of like I could think back to waking up in the morning after graduating from high school going, I don't have to do anything today. There's no longer something I have to do.
Yeah.
Everything from this point onward are things that I choose to do. That was jarring for me. And that's why I was like, well, let me start here. And then I'm going to figure it out from there.
What I love about how you approach this, and it's the mental model that you were using from a very early age. It sounds like it was like related to like how your parents parented. Again, tying back to that, you figure it out. We don't know.
Book, it seems.
Yeah, no, just going out and it sounds like you took let's take a look at the lay of the land here. Okay, those people don't quite have it figured out. I'm not going to wait for someone to tell me what to do. I'm just going to go figure it out. And I know this is productive, and I'm going to get something out of this that's going to be portable. It's going to give me portable skills to the future, and we're going to go on from there. So it's funny.
Very eloquently put that. Yes.
Yeah, no, I think it's super important. And when I reflect on it, and I think I had a bit of a different story in my youth. I was kind of like more looking for like, hey, you guys have been telling me where to go for a long time. Where do I go now? Like anybody? What do we do?
Somebody?
Yeah.
Please?
I guess I'll go to college.
Understood. Yeah.
So you mentioned extended family. How did they apply that pressure? Like to become a doctor or lawyer? Was it just like, this is what you should do? Or
it was just kind of like the conversations, you know, whenever I would speak with them and they'd say, oh, how's school? Are you a doctor yet? Like, not going to be, not trying to be, you know, what are you studying? And I was like, you know, when I first entered school, I was undecided, like I said, which they were like, what do you mean? You can't not study something. Like, again, because I'm sure the schooling model in back home probably is not that way, or you can go to school undecided and just take core classes. And then I went from undecided to business. And the reason I went to business is because in trying to figure out what I wanted to do, what I did was I went to the counselor, like you're supposed to do, right? My counselor in college. And I was like, hey, I know I can't be undecided forever. Like, what do I do? How does one decide? And they give you all of these aptitude tests, right? So I would take all these aptitude tests, and all of them came back business, like big, broad range business. You need to be in business. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I should be a business major then. It makes sense. I like business. I understand, enterprise to an extent. I come from a family of my dad's an entrepreneur, and so I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense. I like to figure things out. Cool. Unfortunately, it didn't really give me much insight into, the rest of the studies. That would have been nice to know. But because they all said business, that is why I went to school and decided that my first major was going to be business. I thought, I'm going to be smart with this though. I'm not just going to go to school for business. I'm going to go to school for business, and I'm going to minor in psychology, because psychology is how people do things, right? It's where behavior lives. And I'm going to be good at business because I'm going to understand behavior. So that was my master plan. I'm going to go to school for business, minor in psychology, maybe marketing, because all those things together is going to make me a dynamic business person. Like, no one's going to have this set of skills in my head. That's how it works.
Yeah.
And it went fine until I took up my first accounting class, and I was like, oh, I screwed up here. I was like, oh, this is not for me. The pamphlet didn't say anything about this. Like, I hated it. I was like, if this has to be the rest of my life, I am done. I am done. I was ready to quit school. I am done from like day 3 of being in an accounting class.
So what kept you going?
I thought this was a complete mistake. I didn't. I dropped those classes, and I went back to taking core classes. I ran. I ran like hell, and I just kept taking core classes, and decided, well, if I'm gonna minor in psychology, maybe I'll just start working on that now, right? And then I'll get back to that business stuff later. I took my intro to psych class, and I was like, I think this is what I should be doing. I enjoy this much more. I felt much more curious. Plus, when I looked at what you have to do, the math was very minimal. So I was like, yeah, that's the one that I want. I want the one with the least amount of math, because the accounting class really scared the bejesus out of me. I did not enjoy it at all. So I started running from it, and, kind of fell into psychology because it had the least amount of math.
I'm laughing because the same thing happened to me with accounting. I started taking business, and I took an accounting course, and I went, screw this. Yeah. And it's right. It's funny because both of our line of work involves quite a bit of math with revenue that we ended up back here.
Yes, it's practical math though.
Actually, I kind of want to link your psychology to what you're doing, your psychology BA, with what you're doing today for work. What you're doing for work today, could you explain it to me? Like, I'm 5 years old, like what you're doing?
Certainly. Yeah. So what I currently do is I help our sales teams close business, right? At a high level, that's my job. I'm their technical counterpart, right? So when they're having conversations with our customers, eventually it comes to a point where they're talking technical. The sales is like, kind of like I was with accounting, I'm out, right? I'm out. This conversation is not for me. So I can empathize with that feeling of, this is it for me. And my job is to come in and gather more information from the customer, truly try to understand what the challenge is, what the pain point is, how can we truly help? What are they really trying to do? What's the goal? And what is the challenge? What's keeping you from achieving that goal? And then I take those kind of, questions and requirements and needs and wants and all of that, and I think about from a technical standpoint, what best meets those needs, and also aligns to where they are with their current technical stack, right? Because they usually have some system in place. So are we talking about ripping and replacing things? Are we migrating things? Like, what does that look like? So I also kind of go under the hood. It kind of reminds me of being a mechanic again. Yeah. I'm a mechanic again, right? I'm going under the hood and figuring out what is the real problem here. I'm assessing it, and then I'm rendering back solutions, right? So here's all the recommendation that I have. I create demos and I show them how the solution solves the challenge that they had and gets them closer to achieving their goals within their current tech stack and everything else that we discussed.
Okay, so how I'm hearing this is that if we were to use the analogy of being a mechanic, if someone brings their car into a shop, it's trying to assess how much is it going to be to fix my car? You'd be the person that goes, lifts the hood and goes, okay, this is all the work that would need to be done. This is about how much time it's going to cost. But you wouldn't be the one that goes in under contract and actually uses the wrench to do all this work afterwards. Nope. You're just like,
I thought, yeah.
I'm off to the next one. Okay.
I like the way you said that, and I'm done.
Yeah.
So yes, I am basically the one running the diagnostics, right? Okay. And understanding, if we're taking the same car analogy, how do you use this car? How far do you plan to drive, right? Because everyone has different needs, right? Some of us drive our cars every day. Some of us drive long distances. Or are you hauling things? Are there children in this car? So understanding, how are you using this? How is it not working for you right now? Where are you looking to go from today all the way to the future, right? And then what do I have to work with? I run the diagnostic. I render back. Here's how you can get where you need to go. And yes, at that point, I do back out.
Yeah. And then literally for those listening, I'm the one that has to come in and actually use the wrench.
You're picking up from there.
Yeah. We have
I use 1 or 2 wrenches, and you're using the full stack.
Yeah. Yeah. It's but I'm grateful for that we have people like you that know what they're doing when they look under the hood at the sales level. So when we have that established, what you're doing for work, how did the BA or the degree in psychology help with your current working environment?
I work with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work with people. I found that, the things that I learned in school, in my degree, the one thing that it gave me above everything else was empathy for people, right? And helped me really just kind of understand behavior. And that is actually what I wanted to learn. I wanted to understand why people do what they do, right? I was always fascinated. Something in my brain has always stuck with. I want to know the phenomena that is the fact that 2 people can do the exact same thing for 2 completely different reasons, and in their minds be fully justified. I think that's spectacular, right? And that is where my curiosity lies. That is it. What makes you do what you do? How do you justify it? And that applies to good, bad, and everything in between, right? So I'm very curious. I'm very, very curious. I'm always wanting to know why, how, things like that. So in this world, that's part of my job, right? I'm running the diagnostic. So I need to understand why, how are you currently doing it? Why doesn't it work? So I get to be like that 5-year-old kid that's like, but why? And then what happens? And then what happens? And then what happens? So it's incredible because that is exactly where my brain likes to go. I want to understand the why and the how so that I can go and say, okay, based on what you're telling me, here's your gap. Here's what you need to do, right? And then I can easily set them up to go to you, right? And you have a clear diagnostic and a clear plan of what they need because I've already gone through and taken all the pieces apart and be like, here's the problem, right? And here's how you can fix it. I love that I get to do that. And my schooling and my training, right, if you will, really helps me do that, not just from a way of being able to ask good questions, but also having that empathy for you're telling me that you have a problem, and that's not easy. And I can listen to you and I'm actually looking to help you. I'm not here to do anything other than to help.
It always reminds me that, when people think about business, even someone like myself can think about it in a very technical, theoretical term, but at the end of the day, the people operating these businesses are humans. And that's where the psychology comes into play. So again, back to the car analogy, which I think is going to be a constant theme,
I love it.
You're not just looking under the hood, but you're looking under the hood and you're talking to the driver. I mean, like you said, how do you want to drive this thing? How have you driven this thing? How do you want to optimize its performance? How can we help you? And so your work isn't actually just looking under the hood. A lot of it is dealing with a person. That's so helpful coming from a psychology background and understanding what's going on.
Absolutely.
And it kind of makes me even think about the question I asked earlier about whether college is worth it. And it's why I wanted to do this show was to go into specific scenarios and talk to people. Okay, well, it's like the car. It's like asking whether a car is worth it. Well, what do you want it? What do you want the car to do? Are you
You
going
want
on
it
road
for?
trips?
Yeah.
Are you racing in F1? Are you like,
Yeah.
you just want this thing to last for 10, 20 years? Like, what's going on? And I love that you shared your story, and it's so cool to see how it's kind of the skills that you developed that were portable over to what you're doing today for work. I know I asked this before, but what else could you have learned in your college experience that would have helped you today in this current job?
How to navigate the business aspect of things. I think that there is a huge gap of knowledge. It still exists in the corporate world, in the tech world for sure, right? Because tech has been and still is dominated by white men. So there is a try to use my words carefully here. There is a I don't want to. It's not an undercurrent. It's an overcurrent. There's a current,
Yeah.
right? There's a certain way to do things that a lot of us are still trying to learn, right? When we come from backgrounds due to our families and our studies and our careers and our past, especially if you're a pivoter like I am, like I pivoted into technology. Where you do your work, you do it well, right, and there you go. That's how you get ahead, right? You do your work, you put your head down, you learn the things, you do it well, you push, and that's how you get ahead. And then you get into this world and you realize that's actually not it. Not even close, actually. If anything, you might set yourself behind, right, by doing a lot of the things that we naturally know to do to get ahead. And how I got here is doing things like that. It is learning more. It is working harder, right? That's how I got here. But then you get here, you realize that doesn't serve you anymore. There's a completely different game at hand here. And I feel like if college would have helped me understand that is the world that I'm going into, I think it would have been a lot easier for me to make sense of it, right? And action on it, right? To figure it out a little bit better rather than being like, I don't understand. Like, you said this and you did that. Why?
Yeah.
You know? And again, being that kind of person, she's very curious about things. I'm just like, but you said we were going towards X. How the heck did we end up at W?
Yeah. How did we navigate here?
How did this happen? Right. How did this happen? So that's something that I'm still learning on a daily basis. And I'm learning, like, I hear a lot of people now, like, you have to show your impact. Like, what do you mean? Like, the deals came across the line. The customers are happy. I asked the questions. I got under the hood. My diagnostics are stellar. Right. Like,
yeah.
I did the work. What do you mean? What do you mean by impact? Like, oh, that correlates to revenue figures. Like, oh, but like, how? Right. And sort of like learning how to play the game is something that I am still trying to figure out. And I see a lot of people struggling with it as well. I was in corporate America for many years in the hospitality side of business. And even that business had its own way of being navigated, but it was not like this. This is a different machine altogether. And it's very confusing a lot of times. We work in a world that's not tangible. Right? What we do is ones and zeros in the cloud. Nothing that we do you can touch. So, right? So so when you go back and say, give me the tangible outcome, like, but we don't work in anything tangible.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? It's a different world. So I think if college could have given me anything, it would have been a bit more about that. If I understood, because even in my business classes, I did a ton of business classes before I hit the wall of accounting, right? That was never something we talked about. The business strategy, the strategy of going into the business world and how do businesses organize? How do they deliver back to stakeholders? What does that look like? I learned how to read a P&L because I had to when I was working in hospitality sales. But if I had never had that exposure because of my job, I wouldn't know what a P&L is and how that works and how I fit into a P&L.
P&L?
Right. So I think there's not, it's a profit and loss statements.
Okay.
So that's how businesses figure out how much money they're making, right?
Yeah.
All of us are aligned in that P&L. All of us are. Everything we do is aligned in that P&L, whether we are increasing it through the revenue side or we're increasing it through the cost side, right? And the balance thereof, we all have an impact on that. And understanding what that is only came to be for me because of the work that I was doing before I got here. So if I take that away, yeah, I wouldn't have a clue of how a business is actually run. And it doesn't make sense to me that all of us work for a business and we don't know how business works. That's not part of our schooling.
I'm so happy you said that, because it's something that I'm personally struggling with. And I've, with my old boss, he's actually given me this feedback is, it's like, you do good work. Like, you clearly are somebody, I'm not tooting my own horn. He just said, I'm clearly somebody that just wants to put my head down and get good work done.
Sorry. You're incredible or whatever.
Stop. Stop.
That's if people can do what you do and still be able to manage keeping themselves sane. So you are incredible.
Who said I'm still sane?
I mean, sane is relative.
Yeah. But that's something I'm trying to learn about. It's one thing to put your head down and get work done, but when you're working in an organization that we work at, which is at scale, it's kind of like, does it matter if no one really knows? Right? You got to. Yeah. It's like marketing. It's a marketing aspect of a business. Like, you need to show the value that you're actually providing. It's kind of like, it reminds me how Apple with its iPod. Like, iPod was not the best MP3 player when it first came out. There were a ton of other, like, way better technically and way better technical MP3 players that were much more user friendly or had way more capability. But Apple killed the marketing game and they blew up from there. So, and when I think about that from a business strategy and apply it to us as individuals, like, how do I do that? And it's not just through like, hey boss, this is what I did. All these things. It's like, it's the little conversations that you have day in, day out that you can kind of slide it in without making it sound like you're bragging. And it's like, it's an art form. Game. It's a game. Yeah. And how do I navigate
it's an entire game? Like I said, we go to school, right? We go to college, and it doesn't matter whether you go to college or not. We go to school. We learn in school skills that will help us be progressive members of society later on, right? Doesn't matter where you stop off in your schooling. That is the goal, right? We learn these set of norms. We learn the arithmetic and all that because we've agreed that this is what it takes to be a productive member of society. What that means in general is you tend to go to work for a business or you start a business. Those are kind of generally how it works, right? You start a business, you go to a business. Nonprofits are also businesses in that realm, using a very broad term of business, right? Someone that owns something that does something.
Yeah.
But we don't know how business works. You're not taught how business works until you're in it. And if you're an entrepreneur, and say you go to school for entrepreneurship, or whether you're self-taught, throughout the process, then for some of those people, and for a lot of those people, I would say, you only get taught how business works. Now you're missing the people side. It's an imbalance, no matter what. So yes, I do believe that there should be some more commingling of those skills, where yes, business people who are going to school for business should also learn people. And people who are going to school for the sciences that revolve around people need to learn business. Everyone should know how business works.
Yeah. And
I don't know how money works. Like, so many people don't even know how money works. I don't know how credit works. Like, and that's everything, right? Once you become an adult, everything revolves around this, and we don't know how it works. You have to stumble along, unless I feel like it's almost assumed that it's something you're taught in your upbringing, but everyone doesn't have that. So the kickoff point is never going to be the same for everyone. And I think that's where college can help level up.
Yeah. And I think something I'm kind of struggling with right now as I think about it is, how can colleges go the distance and actually make this happen? Or is this one of those things where it's just like, they can only help you so much, and at the end of the day, you need to go out into a real world application and experience it for yourself? And I wonder, even like creating scenarios and trying to like create a business scenario where people actually do, case studies or something like that. A part of me thinks, yeah, but it's not it's not the same as when you're in a workplace where you could get fired for this decision and have these kind of financial consequences as opposed to school. And I wonder if colleges will ever be able to get there. I guess what I'm trying to wonder is, well, what could colleges do to actually help this objectively? But that's what I'm struggling with.
I think I have a theory. I have thoughts on it. I think that, can they actually achieve it? No. I mean, there's a part of that that's common sense, right? And there's a part of that is just yourself, right? You have to be willing and open and to look, right? So you can't, as much as we'd love to go in and tune someone's ears, right, to hear, we actually don't have the ability to do that, right? And for better or for worse, that's not something we could do. But I'm a firm believer of like, there is a level of accountability once you bring awareness, right? You can always hide behind, I didn't know. You cannot hide behind, we've talked about this, and you choose to turn away. You didn't learn more. You didn't lean into it. But I understand that some people, again, if we're thinking about the people that had sometimes very linear careers, that had very different upbringings, very different backgrounds, the majority, right? And you fall within the majority, it's very easy for you to truly not see the minority because it's not your reality.
Yeah.
Right? It's not the world that you live in. It is not your reality. So I understand that and I empathize with that. So my thought is, if we have the ability in school to say, let's give you a look at the other side, right? Let's give you a better picture of the broader landscape. Because as a business person, your job is to think broadly, right? You and I, although we don't run it, we run our own businesses by our own roles, right? But we don't run the own business. We work for a business. But our job is to think broadly, right? You have to examine multiple sides of things. And I think that if what college can do is help people learn how to do that, right? As well as if you're talking from a business standpoint, from a people standpoint, give you those exercises, give you the ability to start growing that muscle and the awareness of what you don't know. Yeah. And then at that point, if you choose not to learn, well, that's a choice you make. Yeah. And that's on you, and that's okay, right? 100%. It's a choice. But you can't hide behind the veil that I didn't know. Yeah,
that's on you, absolutely. And what I think, I just kind of thought of something as you were talking about it. Something that they could do is bring in more people with practical experience, like your psychology professor that was practicing at the time that they were teaching, because this is the world that is current. This isn't something based on a textbook that was written 5 or 10 years ago, 2 years ago. Right. It's still like outdated now. And I think and if they can get people that can talk about the dynamics of business from an interpersonal standpoint, that would be really, really helpful. If college wasn't an option for you, where else could you have developed this kind of skill set in psychology?
Well, I think that, again, kind of being one of those natural curious people, I think I probably would have backed into it anyway, because I've always been that way. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of us have that. There's something that you kind of always have been like. So, given the space and opportunity, I think a lot of us can kind of figure that out. It's kind of, people get comfortable settling within themselves. I think it's sort of what is a take on that. I think that, the military gave me a good foundation as well. I found myself being around people that were very much not like me, all the time. And it was a learning experience on both sides. It was a lot of, going through challenges and adversities with people. And, whenever you have to be down in the trenches, so to speak, with someone, it changes your approach to everything. You come out of it very different in how you approach things. There's a level of trust that's created. It's like, it's just different. Your brain just works differently. So I think I would have still gotten it. I think a good chunk of it did come from that experience. So I feel like that probably would have been, if not college, then definitely the military.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. The military is a great option. I have a few friends that have taken that route, and there have been no regrets from the majority of them. So before this interview, you mentioned the cultural expectations of college. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, what I meant by that is the expectation that people have when they go to college. That you're going to graduate, you're going to come out, you have a great job, you're going to buy a house, and then whatever else your life looks like, right? Whether you travel the world, have kids, get married, whatever life looks like from that point onward, is deeply embedded into a lot of people, whether through their families, marketing, right? What TV tells us that is supposed to happen. The studies that show that, hey, if you go to college, you're going to make 4 times the amount of money throughout your lifespan, all these other things. And I think that um, it's a misconception. And sometimes if you don't go, like myself, I think myself going into with no expectation is probably the better way for someone like me. But I know a lot of people who kind of were like, faced with a real jarring reality when you realize that you're going to spend a lot of time, a lot of money on something that has no guarantee of return whatsoever, ever, like ever. And that is the reality. There is no guarantee in return on this. It is truly what you make of it while you're in school, what you do afterwards, the people that are around you, the opportunities that are available to you. That is what's going to make a difference. It is not the degree that's going to make the difference, right? There is so much more you have to do to pull yourself up and figure it out, especially if you don't have legacies of people who went to school and, and I would say a softer landing once you finish. If you don't already have that lined up by virtue of who you are, how you grew up, where you are in life, etc. I think that we do a disservice by not being honest about that fact, right? That student loans are a thing, and that they will come for you, and that it will hinder you from achieving the things that you would like to achieve if you don't have that in line. Like if you don't figure out money and you don't figure that out quickly, you're going to be in trouble, right? It doesn't matter what you went to school for. There are plenty of people that went to school to study medicine and make $300,000 a year that can't take home $20, right? Because you have to understand how to manage money, how to invest, what your credit is supposed to be like, budgeting and all these things is just core aspect of life that you will never learn in college. That is not something that they teach you. So you have to learn these things, whether you do it while you're in college or you do it afterwards, those are the kinds of things that will help append to your college education to help you excel later on. And no one talks about, right? The connections that you make, the people that you meet, like all the things we just spoke about, the game that you're playing is not one that you do X and automatically you will get Y. That is not how this game actually works. And I think that it is a cultural misconception that we have about it. And I think if we go even deeper, for those of us that come from minority backgrounds, it's even worse, right? Because a lot of them think you go to college, that means you've made it, right? It's like, I made debt. That's what I did. I made debt. That's what made it looks like for a lot of us. I made debt. And then that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's also, again, understanding money. Like, debt is not a bad thing, right? But you have to understand it and learn how to navigate it. For many people, that comes much later after a good number of mistakes and a lot of stumbling. And it takes so much longer to recover that then leaves us asking the question that you're asking, was it even worth it? Because that gap is huge.
That is such a great summary of everything we've talked about. And I love your perspective on the debt as well, that not all debt is bad. Obviously, businesses will take on debt to, and they're taking on risk. There's always risk. You're not going to 100% get rid of risk, but they're making a bet that this thing that they're taking debt on is going to help them in the future. And they're accountable for that once they make that decision. So like you mentioned earlier in this podcast, it's insane that they were like, oh, just take on debt. You're 18, you're 19. Like you can take on $150,000 in debt, but you can't have that beer in front of you. Like these little like life decisions.
Right.
It's insane when you think about it.
Learning. I think that's also something that we don't discuss enough. It's like, you go to school, there's a predetermined prerequisite of classes you have to take, right? No one really, some of the best classes I had in school were not on that list. I would say almost the best classes I had in school were not on that list. It was me just being curious, saying, I don't know anything about this subject. I'm going to go learn about it, at least get a little bit before I decide if I want to dive deep or not. Um, and that, at the time when I did that, counselors and my own family, especially extended, and my parents, we already know my family. My family's like, do what you do. Right? My mom and dad are like, do whatever you do. The rest of my family's like, what do you mean you're going to take a break because you want to go study art? Like, I do. What do you mean you're going to deviate and go study jazz? Like, I don't know anything about it. I want to learn about it. What better place? Where else am I going to have someone who is going to show me what this is and what's good about it, what's bad about it, what we know about it? Like, so I say that to say that we don't give enough value to exploration of different diversity of thought while you're in school. It's so linear, right? And so many people are so hell bent on taking that 4-year route, finishing that 4-year route because they've got plans. And I'm like, man, stop and smell the roses for a second, right? And yeah, did I take on more debt because I did it that way? Sure, whatever. I don't care. I became a much more well-rounded individual, right? And I think that I would say around my sophomore year or so, that actually became the goal. I didn't even care about graduating at that point. What I really cared about at that point was pursuing the things that I was curious about that I felt was going to make me better as a person. And I don't know where that frame of thought came from. I think it might have come from just a frustration of trying to figure it out, that graduating no longer became the goal. The goal became, how do I become the best version of myself given what I know, right? What do I not know about that I can learn here, and how could I apply that later on? So I did a lot of reading, a lot of self-study to learn that, music is great for learning and people are, this is a thing. So I'm going to go study it, right? Did I become a musician? No, but that's okay. I could now appreciate it, right? And it gave me a sense of myself that when I finished school, I had such a good sense of who I am and what I like and how I learn and all of these things. I kind of felt like that was a cheat code for me. It elevated me because while my peers were graduating and then trying to figure out themselves as they were figuring out life, I had a firm hold on who I was. And I had all of these different ways of thinking. And I had all of this knowledge and all of these different people that I met. I was all of this like crazy, again, I call it well-rounded because that's how I felt. Like I felt like, to take it back to Salesforce terms, at 360, I felt like I had a bigger chunk of that graduating than if I would have just taken that linear set of courses that were designed for me to take. And I think that we really should encourage that more. I feel like that's what college used to be. I feel like that's what people talked about back in the day. It was like, oh, I took this and I did that, And so I think the rat race and that pressure to finish in 4 years and be linear, and it's just like, it takes away from the fact that this is a time for you to learn who you are, learn how you learn if you haven't figured that out, put that to the test, figure out what life is supposed to be like for you as an individual, and use these things to help you accomplish that. And I gave myself that, and I'm very proud of the fact that I gave myself that. And I say I gave myself that because no one gave me that advice. No one gave me that knowledge. I just woke up one day and said, you know what? I don't care if I graduate. I need to use this time and use these courses, these people, the knowledge that is here to figure me out. Because if I know me, then I can figure anything else out.
It's beautiful how well you put that. And I actually had to note down a couple of things that I was hearing. And first is that you were making yourself broadly exposed to the world. And I think that really helps in your line of work as well, where you're dealing with all these different types of businesses and different people, and that you can kind of relate to them because you're more likely to relate to them because you've been exposed to all these different aspects of the world. With being a veteran, with studying psychology, being in business, working in hospitality, with going to college and studying jazz, and what was the other, and just studying art as well. This is all just
jazz, art history. I think it's dance, you name it. Yeah. I went down the rabbit hole.
And when else are you going to do it? And another thing I noted down here, which I see a lot of people kind of opening up about in the Reddit forums, is feeling bad for not finishing in 4 years, finishing their degree. Whereas I'm hearing your story where you're like, I got to a point where I didn't even care about graduating, I was just so into the actual education aspect of it and following my curiosity. And following your curiosity is something that I didn't realize was so important when I was going to college, and how significant, how much of a difference that makes with your learning capabilities. Because the more I read about it now, there's a doctor named Dr. Gabor Mate who talks about brain development in children and people in their developing years. And when you're actually in this kind of playful mindset and you're following your curiosity, you're tapping into a whole different part of your brain, and you're going into a learning mode, and you can't really be there unless like you're in that playful mode. So if you're just kind of being told what to do, like, okay, I'll go study this, memorize this because I need to do this to get successful, you're not even tapping into the most capable part of your brain for what is needed. Like, you got a Ferrari engine that you're not even going into. So to use my car analogy again.
It's a great analogy. Back to the cars.
I can't let it go.
Back to the cars.
Can't let
Why
it
did
go.
I ever tell you I was a mechanic?
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic because you're choosing an analogy that obviously I understand. That's also really relatable too. We all understand, generally speaking, what cars do, why we have them. So I think you're absolutely right. It's something I didn't know. Obviously, didn't go that deep into learning and development, but it just made sense. I was so stressed out that the best thing I could do for myself was say, you know what, I'm just going to figure out this for myself. And if I graduate, great. If I don't really care, because I know people who graduated and they're still trying to figure out life. And I have at the time I had a good job, right? And so I was like, I've already figured out so many things. Without this thing can't be the end all be all of me. It's impossible. I've already done things. So I think it's also a really good thing too that I did start school the way that I did. I had to have the kind of upbringing that I did, which is figured out, because I didn't feel like college needed to define me. I didn't need it to define me. I didn't need it to give me something. I already had things. This was just a stepping stone to the next thing. And when I saw just how ridiculously challenging it was for no reason, all the red tape, and this was back still where you had to go from office to office and things, and I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, you make this hard for nothing. Like, tell me how much it costs up front. How come you don't know how much it costs until you start taking classes? Like, this doesn't make sense, right? Like, per credit hour, but each credit hour is weighted the same. But I remember having the thought of like so we both go to school, and you study education and I study medicine, for example, and we both spend the same amount of money, but you're not going to make the amount of money that I will make. So why the hell am I thinking so hard about this? This doesn't make sense. Why do our classes cost the same if we literally will never make this? If we follow the plan, right? If we do it as it's laid out, and if it's linear, assuming everything goes according to plan, we are going to end up in completely different places. Why does this cost the same? This doesn't make sense. This is both oversimplified and too complex at the same time for no reason. No, the goal was no longer to graduate at that point. I was like, it doesn't matter. I am going to milk this thing for what I need from it. And if at the end of that line is a graduation, cool, I'll take it.
Yeah.
If it's not, okay, I didn't even walk. I didn't even care to. It was not, when I say it was not the goal, it was not the goal. That thing came in the mail and I was like, cool, sounds good, moving on. It didn't matter.
I have a theory as to, or I'll say a hypothesis as to why those two avenues do cost the same, can cost the same, obviously not the same in every single college. But I think it's what we talked about before, which that cultural expectation that you go to college, and a lot of families coming in from other countries as well that go, oh, we just know if you go to college, it'll be good. Let's pour our money into this. Let's take out, let's refinance our home and put it in. And so you have that as the demand from the consumer perspective. Like, they're willing to pay whatever it takes to get into college. Now you look at the colleges that are going, whoa, these people are willing to pay this money. if you're not willing to pay this money,
just willing to pay whatever I say,
someone is going to pay it because they're refinancing their freaking homes or they're taking out massive amounts of debt. We're going to get our money either way. So here's the price. And I think, in my conversation with John, he's talking about the rate of how college is increasing. It can't keep increasing at this scale. It
never goes down.
Yeah, but it can't keep increasing at this scale. At a certain point, someone's going to go, whoa, why am I paying $250,000 for an education degree when my salary starts at 40 or 50K? Like, it maybe. And so, yeah, I think there'll be a correction eventually if people catch on soon enough.
I hope you're right.
I do too.
I think I have more of a pessimistic theory.
Okay.
Maybe I'm more of a pessimist. I don't think so. I think that college has been, and I think will continue to be, a way to separate the have from the have-nots. It's very easy to keep people out of spaces you don't want them in by creating thresholds that aren't real. So if we think about, if you think about 10 years or so ago, right, to get an entry-level job, you needed a high school diploma. Right? Yeah. Which is why it sort of made, I would say 10, 20 years ago, right? High school diploma was your entry level job. And it kind of made that linear dream cultural thing that we're sold a little bit true, because if you had a degree, that means you came in above entry level, right? But then what happened? All of a sudden, entry level requires a bachelor's degree, a master's degree in some places. Whoa, you've now changed the barrier to entry where you have to go to college. Before, college was an option. Hey, if you want to make this much money, if you want to go into these types of careers, if you want to start your career at this point, you sacrifice by going to college, and then that's how you give yourself, it's sort of like, think of jumping off a trampoline, right? But now you can't even get into the trampoline park until you've been to college. So that kickoff point has now moved. And so I think of it as a way to separate the have from the have-nots, because now you're not even in my space until you've gone to college.
Interesting.
And gone to college doesn't mean you know anything. We know that, right? Because I could very well have just followed the course and never followed my curiosity. It doesn't speak for who I am as a person, how I think, how I will impact your business, going back to that P&L, right? How I will increase it. Going to school does not mean anything, right? We have brilliant business people that went to brilliant business schools that are not good business people, right? That doesn't mean a thing. It doesn't speak to my aptitude. It doesn't speak to my work ethic, right? If anything, it's something that you can use to quickly disqualify me before you even get a chance to get to know me. Before I get the opportunity to present myself to you, you can easily look at this line and say, nope. Right. So I don't part of me feels like the correction won't be there from school. It will be business to do the correction. And I don't think it will be out of goodwill. I think it will be out of necessity, because you are going to run out of people who are going to be able to afford to go to college to take that entry level job. So guess what? You're going to have to lower that bar.
I actually love how you mentioned that. And by correction, I did mean like, the correction of the price will happen not from the college, but from the shift in demand. And in that, like, you're right, we're already starting to see it with certain businesses removing the requirement of a college degree, going,
no one can meet those needs, right? And also, it's twofold. Like, no one can meet those needs, one, and two, like, it doesn't mean you know how to do anything. Like, I think of my work, for example, like, I remember there was a conversation that I had with somebody internally where they were asking, it was a person in leadership that was asking, do you need a degree to do what you do? He was asking me, right? We're trying to figure out, how to get more diverse backgrounds in here. And I wonder, the question was posed to me, do you think that a degree is required to do what you do? And my response was, can you major in solution engineering? And he said no. And I said, well, then the answer is no. I can't even major this. I can't study this.
Yeah.
So no, a degree is not required. I can't even study this. This is not like medicine. This is not like law, right? There are certain fields where that base level of knowledge is a requirement, right? You need to have this thing in order to go to the next thing. But what we do is we're working with people, we're problem solvers, we're deducing things. These are practical soft skills.
Yeah.
These are not skills you learn in college. Moreover, part of my beef is these are not skills you learn in college, and you should. Like, problem solving is something you should be learning, right?
Yeah.
But beyond that, like, no, if you can't major in it, no, it's not a requirement. And even if you can major in it, it's useful but not necessary, because we understand that there are people who are naturally inclined to think in specific ways and to do certain things. If we have that, don't ignore the fact that people have natural, skills, and people can always be developed. And when you think about a role specifically like mine, I do not see how going to college could make anybody better or worse, right? It's more of how you went to college, right? Like if you're someone like that went to college the way that I did, just explored all things, and you're someone who maybe was in a specific type of club or activity where you did problem solving, like sure, how you went to college can certainly make a difference, but how you approach life is the same. It's the same. There's nothing that anybody could have studied in school that would have made them exceptionally better or exceptionally worse to do the work that I do. So no, it's not a requirement. We should be looking at it as a skill. What do people know how to do? What are their passions? How do they think? Are they curious about this? Do they want to do this? And I remember I'm on hiring panels. That's what I'm always gauging for. Do you want to do this? Is there a want to do the hard part of our jobs every day? Do you want to?
Yeah.
Because no matter how much you know how to do something, if you don't want to do it, it does not matter.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't matter.
You're going to be slugging your feet around.
And I can't teach you to want to do something. I can teach you how to do something, but I cannot teach you how to persevere through it. I can't teach you how to enjoy it, right? I can't teach you to want to get up every day and solve people's problems, right?
Yeah.
You have to want to do that. What I can teach you is the how. How do you do that? How do you best approach this? That's very teachable.
I love that. I can't teach you how to do it. Or sorry, I can teach you how to do it, but I can't teach you to want to do it. And that's so true.
Correct. Yeah. And for me, that's what I'm always gauging for. I'm always gauging for, do you give me the sense that you want to do this truly? Have you shown through your experience this is something that you want to do? You want to do these kinds of things. And I never look at the fun part of the job as the want. Everybody wants to do the fun part. Do you want to do the hard part? Do you want to do the part that sucks? Right?
Yeah.
Are you someone who wants to do these things? Because if you are, you're going to do great at this. The knowledge is here, right? Yeah. How you do it, we teach that. That's no problem. I can teach anybody that. What good is it for me to pour into you and show you how to do something exceptionally well if you don't want to do it? It doesn't matter. You're not going to do it well.
Yeah, it seems like to me,
like that's where I think of like, is this person going to be an asset to the organization? Like, not that I want to be.
Yeah, exactly. They could use the tool, but do they want to? That's a huge thing. And what I'm hearing is that it's less so the actual content of the degree for you, and it was the skills you developed and the people that you met that helped you get. It was just the medium for you to kind of use those skills and develop those skills, because the specialty that we're in didn't exist as a product at all when we were in college. Right. So, but yet the skills we developed during that time are still helping. So, maybe colleges can make more of an effort.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Maybe colleges could make more of an effort, just being like, hey, yes, this stuff might be out of date in the future, but let's hone in on the actual skill set that we know will help you down. Like just being able to empathize with people, or getting broadly exposed, learning how to think deeply and clearly communicate what you're thinking about.
Right.
Yeah.
And learn in that realm, right? What do you enjoy doing of those things? Like, yes. Where do you lie? Where is your passion? What kind of person are you? What kind of thinker are you? And I feel like if first year experience in school was something more like that, then people might find themselves switching majors, maybe even able to figure out their majors if they went in undecided, right? And also graduating with a set of skills that they can action on right away. right?
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily biased for action, but I understand that, hey, there's a time to value here situation, and this is a large investment. For me to get a return on that investment, I have to do something,
Yeah.
right? And for many people, it takes many years to figure out what that something is,
Yeah.
or to truly click. And for some people, it unfortunately never clicks, right? Where they just kind of do a job because they have to, or it makes them money, and it takes some time to either get to that place where they're like, I like what I'm doing. I feel good with what I'm doing. And for some people, it never happens. I think a lot of it, unfortunately, could have been remedied way back then when they were in school. And, if they were encouraged to explore things and learn how they learn and learn about those soft skills, right? As well as those skills we spoke about of just how to manage life. I have a friend that works in, she was working in financial aid many years. She's my mother of one of my friends. She's like my bestie. And so she worked in financial aid for a long time. And one of the things that she was like, man, I'm really concerned. She's always said, I'm really concerned because when I would call the students, for example, I would call them, I leave them a message, let them know that, hey, either your financial aid requires a revisement or, whatever. She's guiding them because she's a financial aid counselor, right? So she's guiding them. And or people would call her and be like, hi, yes, I need to know what my balance is. She's like, who are you? What's your ID number? Like, they don't even know how to engage in a conversation with someone to gather information from them. She's like, these are like life skills, right? That these students just do not know.
Yeah.
She's like, I had students come up to me and say, I got this check. I don't know what to do with it. How does this thing work? Whoa. We stopped teaching people how to endorse checks. Holy moly, this is a problem. She's like, and the students that don't know, how to even take care of themselves. Again, we talked about finances, like all these life skills, like core life skills, how to draft a letter, business writing, how to show empathy, right? How to be hospitable in the workplace. These are life skills that we know will help you make or break in your career. And there's pivotal points in which these things are actually the catalyst by which you actually succeed or fail. And we're not teaching this.
I love that you use the word empathy, and I kind of want, because I know it's overused and some people might be like, oh, what do you mean by empathy? But empathy in that exact scenario with the student aid employee is empathizing with the employee, meaning like, they don't know who I am. I'm going to call them and I'm going to give them a way to identify me so I can find out what I need. And it doesn't mean just empathizing with what they're feeling emotionally, but just logistically, what do they need from me so I can get what I need? Like, it's so simple, but it's a skill.
Empathy can be self-serving.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I need something, so I have to empathize with you so I can get what I need from you. And I think there's something wrong with that. But yes, you're right. People think of empathy purely from an emotional standpoint, but that's not it. It's also the fact that you think about the student aid counselor is one of, say, 5 in the entire school, and there's thousands of students here. If I just call her, how the heck would she know who I am?
Yeah, and it's just... Yeah, it's so silly when you think about it. But you want to like...
It is silly, but we don't teach these things.
No, and it'd be awesome if we did. What I love about, again, your approach, I think this is my 3rd time saying it, but it sounds like you approach college with just exploring things, but you didn't have this kind of pressure on yourself to be like, I'm going to pick my major right now, I'm going to go for it, and that's the only thing. Even if I go into that accounting class and I fucking hate it, like it seemed like you knew, I'm going to go take these courses. I'm going to go into accounting. Oh shit, I don't like accounting. Oh, my assumptions of what I wanted might be, okay, let me recalibrate here. And I feel like that's what college is. It's just trying different things, whether it be a course, whether it be like meeting people, relationships, getting to know professors, hearing their stories, and seeing what kind of direction you get pulled in. And it's a good way to sample it.
Yeah, I feel like that's what college should be.
Yeah.
But I think when college, became business first, education second, or third or second, depending on where you go, and who you're guided by, unfortunately, it shifted that, and when we started looking at college as just again, the barrier to
Yeah.
entry, right? When this is the thing that requires for me to do that other thing, then you lose sight of that. You don't give yourself and you don't give other people the space in the room to do exactly that, which is just explore,
Yeah.
right? You take this time, this middle time between, adulthood and not adulthood, this strange part in your life, and make of it what you need it to be for you, right? And take with it, it's sort of like that old saying, take what you need, leave what you don't. We don't give people the freedom to do that. Now, for me, because I didn't have that pressure from my parents, right? My extended family, they're so far away from me. I'm like, yeah, whatever, sounds good. Because I didn't have that pressure, it was also easier for me to do that. But it also came with a level of accountability. I was accountable for this. And because I was accountable for this, I had to make sense of it. And this wasn't going to work for me, not this way, right? So at the end of the day, I was like, if I'm going to be left holding the buck for this, it has to be in a way that makes sense to me. And that linear, very structured, this and this and this with no context of why, way of going through college wasn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
Right. So I think having that accountability is also what allowed for me to say, no, this is not going to work. This isn't the way I need it for me. I need to be able to explore. So I am going to rid myself of this expectation of graduating in 4 years or whenever. I didn't care. I'm here to learn something, and I'm going to learn as much as I can while I'm here. And that's, I think, why I got to that point. I didn't have that pressure. I think also a lot of parents and families put that pressure on kids of like, got to finish, got to, it's like, if you are going to be expected to be an adult and walk on your own at some point in time, when are you going to learn to do that? What better time than in this structured place where you have some walls, right? Some safety built around you to an extent, right? To try things, to fall and get back up and kind of figure it out, right? This is a good middle time to do that. I gave myself that, but I also, by proxy had my parents give me that by them not putting that pressure on me, to do anything in any amount of time in any particular way. It was me to figure out, but I was also responsible and I was very cognizant of that.
Oh man, I hope there's parents listening to this episode about with a 101 on how to not put pressure on kids and let them, develop the tools.
Be the guardrails.
Yeah.
Not the guards.
Be the guardrails, not the guards. Man, that's awesome.
Maybe that's what I'll tell my dad. His book needs to be titled. Hey, Dad, you have to write a book now. Yeah. I just gave a title.
By the way,
to it.
I just gave you a 2, maybe 3-year project.
I already got a title. I just need you to just write it.
That's awesome.
Like I said, I don't know if that's what they set out to do. I should probably ask my dad that. So they just set out to be this kind of parent, and it just happened. Because I think a lot of times, as immigrants coming into this country, like they had their own things they were trying to figure out. So I also wonder, like, were my parents technically like absentee parents to an extent? Right, they gave me just enough to figure it out, but like they were legit trying to figure out their own lives at the same time, and kind of needed me to be very self-reliant.
Yeah, this wasn't like a parenting tactic
for me in that way. I don't know. I don't know that. I'm going to ask him that. I don't know that, but I'm grateful for the way that, that I was able to start to conceptualize things and figure it out. But I think, again, everything for me felt dependent on, like, I've always had, my parents gave me a very strong sense of responsibility early on in life. If you do it, you commit to it, it's yours, right? You can dump it anytime you want, but you have to accept what comes from that. And that's okay. It was always okay. Yeah. It was always okay.
Yeah.
You can always quit, but you quit, that means you quit. Right? So that means you don't get that thing. You can't expect to receive something you didn't actually walk the steps.
If you didn't put the time in, then
you don't get it. And you're going to have to accept that. And so, it was very real. It was a very real kind of way of growing up. So when I got to school, very much the same. And I was like, again, if I'm going to be responsible for this thing and I'm seeing these bills rack up and I'm like, I'm going to owe money for this, I'm going to have to do this my way, because otherwise I am going to graduate and I'm going to be lost. And that is not going to yield what I need, which is to go back and pay these loans off, right? And make sense of this and figure out life from this point onward. I'm going to be stuck. Yeah. I don't want to graduate and be stuck. I'd rather not graduate and not be stuck mentally.
Yeah. And I totally get that. My first year when I was on academic probation, it's because my parents actually paid for that first year of college. And I didn't have to deal with the repercussions, and I wasn't invested. And then I was like, oh shoot, okay, I need to go and do this thing when I went back. And once it was like my own money, that was a game changer. I was like, oh no, I gotta work for this.
Yeah. It's hard to appreciate something you didn't have to work for because you don't know what it took to get it.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't say that in like a, you know, people are like, oh, you know, spoiled people. Like, no, it's not that. It's like you truly do not know what it takes to get it. So it's very hard for you to understand how you should appreciate it and approach it because you have no idea.
Yeah.
Right? It just always was.
Yeah. Excellent. Mya, thank you so much for doing this podcast with me today. I've had a blast. I loved our conversation. I loved hearing your perspective and your story. You know, what I love about this is that even with people that I've met at work, like I just find out so much about them that I didn't know. And I love this avenue. I really appreciate all the insight, and I think it's really important for people to hear as well with all the topics that we've talked about. If someone wants to find you, how can someone reach out to you?
Yeah, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, you can LinkedIn. My @name is Mya Matos, MYAMATOS. On Twitter, I'm at Dream and Blaze altogether. So Dream, the letter N, Blaze. It's like dreaming and I'm blazing. And if you're a veteran, you can find me on Veterati. I'm very active there. So if you want to schedule time with me, veteran spouse, if you're not familiar with Veterati, sign up, go for it. And you can find me there as well.
Outstanding. Thank you so much once again. And for those of you watching, I hope you all have a fantastic day. Take care, everybody.